You're listening to Spellbound. Welcome to episode 29 of Spellbound. I'm Julian Smith. Spellbound is now a CastBox original. You can still listen to it anywhere else you typically listen to podcasts, but check out CastBox today and see what's making it the fastest growing and highest rated podcast app for both iOS and Android. All right, I'm here with Andrew Rader. Once again, the fax machine is back.
I'm back.
He's back. That's your catchphrase, I guess, because
that's what I always say.
You always say I'm back. It's like a cheesy sitcom slogan.
Exactly. Yeah.
Catchphrase. I think we should have a segment. I was thinking today we should have a title for the segments that we do when it's just you and me, because at this point there's been so many. I was thinking, what do you think about this?
Banter?
Two damn white guys.
Yeah. Sure.
Two damn white guys.
That's good. I like it.
What else would you call this?
That's what I would call it.
So today we're talking about the origins of boredom.
What is boredom?
We were talking about this the other day. This is actually another conversation that I think was induced by beer, possibly.
Yeah, we were at the bar. I don't remember how this one came up specifically, but I have never heard anyone talk about boredom before, so I was curious about it.
It was you, me, and my cousin Garrett. My cousin Garrett was in town. We all got together because you two are like engineer types. So you guys were all like talking about engineering stuff that I couldn't really participate in. And then
so you were bored?
Maybe that's how that started. Maybe I got bored listening to you guys go on and on and on about technology. But maybe that is what happened. But yeah, I remember just at some point saying something about, I wonder who was the first animal to get bored. And then,
well, do animals get bored? So this is one of
the question. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, spin off on a tangent here. Do animals get bored? First person to get bored, we don't really know. Did hunter gatherers get bored? That's another thing, right? Like, is boredom a product of our modern civilization, or did hunter gatherers get bored? Why does boredom exist? Is there some evolutionary reason? What benefit does getting bored convey to us?
These are all good questions. You know, I'm assuming you're about to give us whatever or whatever there is to be known about this. But before we go in, I think it would be interesting to just start with like some uneducated guesses. And I guess I'm the only one here that's uneducated, so I guess I have to guess. Can I just get? I'm gonna just take some blind stabs.
And what is boredom? First of all, so we had some conversation about this at the bar, and we threw out some ideas about what boredom is, what causes it, why it might exist, but maybe we can recap that.
Yeah. We were talking about how we were like, is it self-awareness? Is it the awareness of time passing linearly? And or is it I think Garrett, my cousin, said something about the idea of if you're not improving yourself, like the idea that an animal once realized it was not doing anything to better its situation, whether it was like it noticed a vicious cycle or a pattern of some kind, and then it just realized it was stuck in a rut and got bored, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, not fulfilling its objective. Right? Mm-hmm. Like it has some purpose, and if you're not fulfilling your objective, then maybe that's when you get bored.
Right.
There's a lot of things we don't know about boredom, surprisingly. We don't really know what it's for. Now, not everything actually does have an evolutionary explanation. Some things just happen for no particular reason because they've just been around. And
is that really true?
It is true, actually.
There are just random mutations in evolution?
Well, there are. And if the mutation has no impact whatsoever on our fitness being our survival or the survival of our children or our ability to have children and pass on our genes, then it can just kind of be there for no particular reason. You know, we may have the appendix for no particular reason. We used to have it, maybe it served some purpose at some point, but we haven't really gotten rid of it because there has to be a reason, an evolutionary drive that impacts survival or survival of children or reproduction that causes something to get removed from our genes.
But that doesn't mean it never served a purpose.
Well, there's other things that
you could say goosebumps. Like the goosebumps are similar to this. Yeah, we used to get like our feathers used to stand up when we were birds, and that's what goosebumps are. And like it's pointless now, but like we know now like why we get those still. So it's not necessarily pointless. Even though it might be pointless now, it's not like completely pointless. It at one point had a utility because it was making the animal seem bigger in a moment where they were like supposed to flee or something.
Yeah, I suppose so. But there's certain things that just are there for no particular reason because they just don't come into the evolutionary equation. Evolution basically seeks to continue things that help our survival or help the survival of our children, or eliminate things that are detrimental to that. But if they're just kind of there, like it really may have no particular benefit. I mean, things, yeah, you're right, that typically in the past they have conveyed some kind of benefit. Like some people still have tails and horns, for example.
I've heard of this.
Yeah. There's a guy who had a 13 long inch tail, and his wife wasn't a fan of it.
There must have been all kinds of jokes about that tail being 13 inches long.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. His quote was, "It doesn't look good. My mother and my father didn't want me to keep it," and he eventually got married. Yeah. So
oh my
anyway,
God.
Yep.
Did you what do you do if you're getting engaged to somebody and you have a tail and they don't know about it? Do you just
I guess that's the kind of thing you have to tell them about before the wedding.
Yeah, you gotta. Is that like a first date conversation or like a fifth date conversation?
Okay, so but why do men have nipples?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just because humans are forming, and we males and females both start out the same in utero, like as we're developing. And so we both just get nipples because it's easier to just put nipples on both.
So
right?
what about? I mean, this is definitely tangenting, and we're probably going to end up cutting this out. But what about gender in general? How does gender evolve in general? Because that seems like maybe the actual better question than like why do men have nipples?
Well, sex is to prevent contamination from parasites. Basically, that's why sex was invented.
Really?
Yeah, sex was invented by microorganisms who cross genes, because this is actually why sex was invented, to give some kind of evolutionary benefit. So you more change with each generation because you're crossing over from a male and a female, and the offspring is different from the parents and shares traits of both, and there may be a parasite that could infect one of the parents, but then the offspring might get the benefit. The offspring might get the benefit of protection from the parasite. What about pain in childbirth? That's not. I mean, pain does certainly.
Well, pain in childbirth actually can be explained through the shrinking of the hips and the pelvic bone in humans as they became bipedal.
Yeah, but is it sort of a purpose, the pain part? I mean, obviously it's an effect of evolution, but is there a purpose of having so much pain in childbirth? I think evolution just doesn't care.
I think it's just that
you feel pain, right?
I mean, I guess animals feel pain too.
Well, there is a purpose of pain. Obviously, it's to tell you not to do that activity, but
do not reproduce.
But it's not like
do not have children.
But it's not like you. Well, right, exactly. It seems to be kind of the opposite, right? Although I'm not sure that pain in childbirth prevents a lot of people from having children, but it seems to just kind of be there. And evolution doesn't give a crap that you're in pain, right? As long as you're surviving and having children. Now, interestingly, we used to think that animals didn't, or at least a number of scientists thought that animals did not experience pain, and it looked like they were experiencing pain, but the scientists thought they actually weren't, and it was just some kind of nerve reflex that mimicked pain.
Interesting.
So, yeah, they used to do horribly cruel things to animals, like vivisection, which is like cutting them open while they're alive to kind of, for medical students to like show what internal organs look like. So you'd see like the beating heart of a dog once you cut the skin away. It's just horrible. But and they thought this was okay because dogs don't feel pain, but that's obviously total bullshit. Like, why wouldn't dogs feel pain? I mean,
right.
I mean, we don't know for sure. Actually, this is the other thing about animals being bored. We don't know what animals feel.
Right. This was part of the conversation with Garrett. It was about like, do dogs get bored?
Yeah.
Because dogs look bored sometimes, but are they actually bored, or do they just like appear to be bored because that's how we're interpreting it because we understand boredom? Or maybe they experience some form of boredom, but they're not aware it's boredom. Maybe they're not like actually looking for some stimulus. Maybe they're like actually just, boredom. No like they're just empty.
Maybe they're
just
seeking
empty.
to change it. Yeah, but okay, so we don't know if animals experience boredom. We can't really know what they experience. However, they definitely experience the same impacts of boredom. So they look like they're experiencing boredom. Like,
at least.
Yeah. So they've done a lot of studies like with zoo animals. And if you put zoo animals in a cage with a lot less stimulation, they definitely act more bored. And they actually act more aggressive. So they'll be bolder and try to eat food that they shouldn't necessarily. Like they'll lose a lot of their fear because and this actually kind of gets to maybe what the purpose of boredom is. The animals who are bored, who are placed in cages with like not a lot of toys and stimulation, will try to change their situation by doing things to try to rectify it. So they'll be more adventurous and more curious about things that actually do come into their cage. And so we think, and this is kind of just people throwing out ideas, but I think that boredom serves to cause us to change our situation. And it's basically a stimulus for curiosity. Like if we are in a situation where we're not experiencing stimulus, we go out to try to seek to change that and change our situation. And that's kind of what it's like, a motivational force. And if you're bored, your mind is kind of wandering. So actually, this gets back to what is boredom.
Well, this kind of sounds like an argument for like this kind of paints boredom as the impetus for evolution in the first place. Like fish getting tired of the water creates amphibians, creates lizards, creates mammals, creates apes, creates humans.
Don't think it really works that way.
I mean, that's kind of what you just said. That's kind of what you just said, right?
Yeah. So evolution works at the generational level. So you don't have evolution within a generation. So it's not like a fish gets bored and then goes up onto land.
Well, this is actually an interesting question because I mean, there's microevolutions generation to generation, right? Isn't that all evolution is? It's just a giant mass of microevolutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's evolutionary change with every generation, and then you get hundreds, thousands, millions of generations, and then you get big changes.
Okay, so maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying then.
Yeah, so
sounded like you were saying the
so
opposite.
there was like a first fish to go up on land, but it's more like they were kind of like mud skippers that could kind of go probably between land and water, and they kind of spend a little bit more time every time, and
it's
one was a little bit better
or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
Istosega, or however you say it.
Yeah,
it's that creature that they found. It was between Canada and Greenland.
Yeah, okay.
But regardless, it was the missing link between amphibians and reptiles and fish. It was just like because for a long time it was like this thing. It sounds like you already know about this. I don't have to tell you.
No, I mean I'm aware of the ancestor you're talking about, the first fish, but I'm not sure the specifics of where it came from.
Neither of us know how to say the actual.
Well, so I know ichthyo just means fish. Actually, that's like the scientific word. Like a fish scientist would be an ichthyologist, I think. So that's why where the ichthy comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, boredom, I think, is a motivational force that causes our ancestors to seek out new resources, basically to explore, to be curious, and try to figure things out. So if they weren't doing that, but it comes back to like, what is boredom? And it's actually two things. It's inactivity, but brain stimulation or some kind of energy going on in your brain. You have to be thinking, right? Because if you have inactivity but you don't have the stimulation, it's meditation or it's sleep or something like that, right?
Meditation.
It's like meditation, except with the stimulation. So your mind is racing. You're not bored if you just can calm your mind. That's what, like in meditation, you're trying to get rid of the boredom by purging your thoughts, right?
You're like leaning into the boredom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Meditation is basically leaning into boredom. And if you're bored, your thoughts are just kind of racing, right? And you can't get rid of it. The other thing that is almost always associated with boredom is control. So it basically a lack of control. So if you're like a security guard and you just have to do your job and sit there for 8 hours, you're probably going to be bored. I think this is why kids get bored too. You know, have you ever noticed that like adults don't get bored as much? At least I don't.
Or maybe they're just leaning into it.
Yeah, maybe they've learned to cope with. Well, that's actually definitely true. They've learned to cope with it, and they have experience and stuff like that. Maybe they have more things to think about, and kids don't really have as much of a context. But kids also kind of have to do what their parents say, and they don't really, they can't leave the house necessarily, so they're bored if they're stuck at home. So it's basically this lack of control, and they're stuck in this situation for some reason, and that's when you get bored. If you're trapped in a situation and you don't have stimulation, and you just have this brain activity where you're kind of thinking about things and tossing things over in your head. And it's like introspection about, I'm trapped here. Like, I just can't leave. That's kind of what boredom really is.
Yeah, but is it trapped? Trapped seems like maybe, I mean, not that trapped couldn't be part of it, but it also seems like maybe it's something slightly more broad than that, just being trapped.
It's definitely lack of stimulus, being trapped, and lack of control, and brain activity at the same time. That's kind of what boredom is. Animals get bored. In zoos, there was like a gorilla enclosure, and they would put raisins around the cage just for them to find. It's like a scavenger hunt, just to keep them kind of busy. Because otherwise they get really lethargic and just kind of lay down. I mean, they definitely exhibit bored behavior. So I'm pretty sure that animals get bored. So it's not kind of lack of doing human things or lack of screen time or lack of seeing your TV shows.
Is there research on whether animals feel boredom? Have you looked into this?
Yeah, there is research, but you can't prove you can't prove what they feel, but you can definitely prove that they act bored.
There's no brain scan that will say, "Oh, you have a severe case of boredom. Look at this."
Right.
Look at this chart.
Actually, as far as I'm aware, there isn't a way to scan your brain and tell if you're bored.
Maybe boredom is just the product of people expecting unrealistic amounts of stimulus.
Yeah, and let's talk about like what is stimulus too, right? So is it associated with memory? It basically stimulus you would think is like something new because you get bored with things you've already done too much. If you've seen the same movie over and over, you get bored with it. If you're like a babies get bored in like 15 seconds playing with the toy, right? I'm noticing this with my baby.
Really?
And as long as you like switch activities every 5 minutes, she's fine. Even if you go back to previous activities. But
you and your wife both have PhDs, so your kid like already basically has a PhD.
Well, she just figured out how to push a button with her head today, so that's a big step.
Making mom and dad proud.
Yeah. So anyway, but you know, babies get bored. They get bored after like a few seconds, right? So I think as you get older, you either have better coping skills or for whatever reason, you get less bored. Better coping skills, or you can control the direction of your mind, your thoughts, or maybe you just have a lot to do. I mean, I'm too busy to get bored, basically.
So this suggests actually the opposite of what we just said, which is that boredom is just a product of people expecting too much stimulus. So you're actually saying that you think it's normal for living creatures who have consciousness to feel bored.
Oh yeah, every now and then everyone probably feels bored,
so
and it's kind of a motivational force to do something different.
You don't think it has anything to do with the ability to recognize patterns and you know, I mean, because first let's take this for example. So dogs, you know, they say dogs don't realize how long their owner is gone. They're, you know, if their owner leaves, like the dog just kind of sits there and waits forever because it just doesn't know how much time has passed. So how could a dog get bored?
Because it can't read the clock.
Time isn't real, obviously. I mean, I know what you're saying, but I mean, there is no, the clock is just following the pattern of the sun, you know. But yeah, the dog doesn't realize that like it's going to be 3 more hours till the owner comes back.
Yeah, they don't know when the owner's coming back, but I think that dogs surely sense the passage of time. Like, why wouldn't you think? I mean, I'm not saying they do, and we couldn't prove it either way, but I think the most logical explanation is just assuming that animals do sense the passage of time.
Is the ability to sense the passage of time a product of our pattern recognition abilities?
Well, our consciousness probably allows us to think more about it, more introspectively about the passage of time. But I think animals probably are aware of the passage of time.
And I guess animals can detect a certain degree of patterns, maybe not really sophisticated patterns, but they know, like, if you call their name enough times, they'll know, like, they have to respond to that name. You know, so I guess they have some pattern recognition ability.
Well, it depends on the animal dramatically. Like some dogs can learn like 1,000 words, but many animals...
Is that a pattern recognizing ability?
Yeah. It's forming associations in neurons, definitely. So neural links, neural connections would basically form. That's what memory is. So, but all animals have memory, right? Mm-hmm. Even cockroaches would have memory, and goldfish have actually pretty good memory. People say like 3 seconds, but goldfish actually have months of memory. They've done studies with goldfish where they train them to respond to food being put in the water with certain sounds, and then they'll come back months later and they'll still remember the same sounds and they'll respond as if there's food being thrown in the water. And they'll do this even from like baby goldfish fry to like 5 months later when they're adult goldfish. So maybe goldfish actually have better memories than humans because you don't remember stuff when you were a baby, but a baby goldfish would still remember.
All right, we're going to put a pin right there for just a second. It's time for our sponsored break. I want to talk to you guys about contacts. If you wear these little devils in your eyes, you can know how convenient they can be. You can also know how annoying they can be to re-up when you run out. I hate going to the doctor. I hate all things doctor related. I actually like my optometrist a lot. Mark Chung in West Hollywood, shout out, represent. No disrespect to him, but I gotta give honor where honor is due because I am blown away by the Simple Contacts app. It's available for iOS and Android. I don't think I've ever had an easier time ordering contacts. And I'm not just saying this because I'm working with them on this segment. They actually gave me a code to order some contacts, and I ordered the same exact pair. They had the exact same brand and model of contacts that I wear, which is that's a really hard one to find, so I was surprised they had it. And it was just super easy. I didn't even have to like give them my prescription. They just called my doctor for me. I verified my prescription because I didn't have it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be hard. But they just like straight up called the doctor for me. It was insane. Next thing I know, my contacts are in the mail. I've got tracking information. They're at my front door. And now I'm wearing them. And I can literally see through solid objects right now. No, I'm joking. What would be the point of that? If you got to go somewhere like out of town or something, I could see how it'd be really nice to just open it up and order them, and then you don't have to go anywhere. You save money on the doctor's visit, not to mention, because if you don't need to get an eye exam or anything like that, which this is not a replacement for, by the way, you still need to go get your eye exams. But if you don't need to do that, why pay for a doctor's visit? Just re-up with Simple Contacts. They do all the work for you. They ship the contacts to your front door. How much easier does it get? They're going to give you guys $20 off just for listening to this. simplecontacts.com/spell, SPELL, or enter the coupon code SPELL at checkout in the app. Either way is fine. You're going to get $20 off your order. I will use it again, and I hope you try it too, because why wouldn't you? Unless you love taking time out of your day to drive to a doctor's visit when you could just as easily order the contacts from your sofa while you're Netflixing and chilling. That coupon code again is SPELL, SPELL, entered at checkout, or you can go to simplecontacts.com/spell. All right, Andrew, we were talking about boredom, and I was going to ask, is there any utility to boredom?
Yeah, it's to tell you to do something different and kind of be curious and explore and learn new things and go out. It's to improve yourself. The other thing is, here's a possible evolutionary benefit of boredom.
Before you go there, what research showed that? Do we know, like...
Yeah, so I'm not sure...
unanimous?
Well, I don't know how you could design an experiment to prove the purpose of boredom. I don't think anyone knows for sure. This is conjecture.
Okay.
But it stands to reason, I guess, that the opposite of boredom is doing stuff. Like when you're bored, you want to go fix the situation by doing something, and there is purpose evolutionarily in doing stuff, right?
I don't want you to forget where you were going, but I also want to cover something that we were on a good tangent with. I want to make sure we explore it properly. We were saying we were talking about defining stimulus. Like what all could stimulus be?
Any kind of input to the brain, really, at a basic level. So that could be signals through your eyes of colors. It could be sounds coming in through your ears. It could be smells. But fundamentally for humans, I think it's kind of like mixed stimulus and something you're interested in, something your brain is following. It's something for your brain to think about.
It's some kind of change.
Yeah, it's mostly change. But honestly, how long would you be interested in a wall of blinking lights, even if they kept changing? I guess it's kind of meta change.
Isn't that all an LCD screen is on your TV?
That's a really good point, actually.
It's just tiny blinking lights.
Pretty much. It's a lot of blinking lights. 1028 by 760 or 1280 by 768. Yeah, that's true. So apparently humans can be stimulated almost indefinitely with just tiny blinking lights. But it's not the blinking lights themselves. If they were just random, I don't think you would be stimulated for very long. That would be a bad screensaver. But what's interesting about
You're talking about reality TV now.
Pattern. Yeah, pretty much. That pattern of lights kind of looks like a Kardashian.
Yeah.
But no, we're talking about patterns.
We're halfway there.
We're talking about the fact that those blinking lights form patterns that your brain recognizes and able to kind of digest and think about and make connections with things you already know.
Right.
Like if you had no memory, would you find all stimulus really interesting? Like if you had like Alzheimer's or something, or some kind of memory loss, and you constantly met the same people, you got up every day and went through the same routine exactly, but you don't remember it at all. Would that be enough stimulus not to get bored?
I feel like we can see with Alzheimer's patients how they lose interest in life. It must be that repetition must be impacting them, even if it's only on some subconscious level that they can't quite pinpoint. It's got to be affecting them.
That's a good point, actually. I hadn't thought about that. Maybe there is some kind of not kind of accessible memory, but there's some kind of thing in their brain. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in your brain that you don't really know about.
Right.
So maybe there is something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know. It's just shooting from the hip here.
Yeah. Another possible evolutionary benefit of boredom, if you're bored, you're basically sitting around doing nothing, right?
Right.
So you're basically lazy. If you're a hunter-gatherer, you're just basically like lying on your ass, not going out hunting and gathering, right?
Right.
It doesn't make you an attractive mate to the other hunter-gatherers, right? So the lady hunter-gatherers are watching you. You look like a lazy bum.
Right.
So, and they're not going to want to make hunter-gatherer children with you.
This is null and void in the future where nobody's working because computers are doing everything.
I mean, we still definitely benefit.
We might actually devolve to some place where it's like kind of in the old days where like really overweight people were attractive. Where it's going to become the same thing again, where like the lazier you are, the more attractive you are.
Well, we still value successful people, go-getters. People now go to the gym. Like you actually have to be more active to be attractive because you have to like work off all those calories and stuff like that, right? So we definitely value that. And so basically, if you are lying around and lazy, you're not going to make hunter-gatherer children, and that boredom is telling you to get off your ass and go hunt and gather. Right? So maybe that's the advantage, too. There's some sexual selection advantage to being bored that tells you not to just sit on your ass and not hunt and gather.
You just keep suggesting, seemingly accidentally, that boredom is the impetus for evolution.
It's not at intergenerational level.
You still don't think so?
So boredom maybe is an impetus for self-improvement, which leads you to be more successful in evolution, which is why boredom is a thing and an advantage maybe. But that doesn't mean that animals are bored, so they go evolve.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't like evolve. You can be like, oh, it's time to evolve now. But I think especially in terms of these microevolutions we were talking about earlier that can happen generation to generation, if you do enough self-improvement, it is going to have a large effect on your life as a whole, which can absolutely affect your kids and their kids and things like that. I mean, on all kinds of levels.
Absolutely. So the first use of the word boredom in English was in 1852 in Charles Dickens' Bleak House. So that's the first use of the word bore. And we don't actually know bore as like in you're a bore. Okay, okay. I think the line was actually you're such a damn bore or something like that. We don't actually know where that comes from, the word bore. And it's interestingly related to boring, like digging tunnels or drilling. And we don't really know why that is, but they actually might be the same word.
Or maybe a wild boar.
No, because it's spelled differently. Yeah, but it's spelled identical to boring through like metal or like tunnels and digging, basically, right? Yeah, and it may be because that takes a long time. So one suggestion for the origin of boring, something being boring or boredom, is that it's kind of like digging a tunnel because it's slow and tedious.
Interesting.
But the Romans talk about boredom, even though they don't have the same word. Obviously, they spoke Latin. But there's a story from ancient Rome, Seneca, who talks about an entire village being saved by a guy, and the village was suffering from boredom. So basically, like this village was just kind of bored, and this guy came along and saved them from it. But we don't know what he did to save them from it, because that part of the manuscript was lost. We actually are missing a lot of parts.
Sounds like a Monty Python
Roman
script.
Greek stories.
They lost the most important part.
Yeah. But the Romans also talk about boredom in the context of teenagers scrawling graffiti on the wall, because Roman walls in Rome, Pompeii, actually we see them now today, are covered with graffiti. Basically, mostly like sexually explicit graffiti. So they'd make fun of the nobles by drawing like them with large phalluses and stuff like that.
That's making fun of them?
Well, that's
in America, that's a compliment.
Yeah, I don't know. Just like doing lewd sexual acts and
whatever
things like
floats
that.
your boat.
Exactly. So yeah, they draw sexually explicit images on the walls of Rome, and the philosophers would write about how it's just the bored youth, just like today.
They actually said this back then.
Yeah.
What year was this?
Oh, it's like turn of the millennium, the first millennium.
Okay, I guess it's no surprise, because I guess you could say that Buddha really talked specifically about boredom most of the time.
Is that true? Yeah, I guess.
You could say that. You could say that. I'm not saying that he did, because I don't even know if he used the word boredom, but just the idea of like the mundane aspects of life and leading into them, and just like letting them kind of wash over you and have no effect on you.
Yeah, the pursuit of happiness, of human happiness for Buddha, was kind of just an illusion. It was all like the pursuit of like gain. You need to purge yourself because want And
Jesus
envy,
too, for that matter.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yeah.
Want and envy would just kind of create misery because you're never satisfied. You never have enough, and even if you achieve that thing, you're no longer happy with it, and you're just going to want something else, right? So Buddha's solution to this was just to purge yourself of all desire, basically, and that's basically Buddhism. You achieve boredom, but without the thoughts racing through your mind that cause you to be bored, and it's just basically meditation.
Yeah, well, it's like he's saying
purging yourself with something like that.
Yeah, it's like he's saying you come to terms with boredom as a force of nature almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And try to defeat it by kind of purging those desires.
Because I think a lot of people will just get, whenever they're feeling bored, they'll just like, I'll just get on the internet. I'll go on Amazon and see what Amazon thinks I should buy today. And they'll just buy something, get a little dopamine rush. It'll show up in the mail a couple days later. A lot of people will treat it by like binge watching stuff. Or,
they're trying to push away the futility of human existence, basically.
Yeah.
So this is something that Schopenhauer said, which is very similar to Buddha. And Schopenhauer's a German philosopher, big inspiration for Nietzsche and stuff like that. He basically thought that we get bored because life has no intrinsic meaning. So when you scrape away all the peripherals, all the kind of thoughts and stuff, you're left with the lonely nothingness of existence.
Interesting. I'm not sure I totally agree with that.
It's kind of sad.
I'm not sure I completely agree with that.
Yeah, he was a ray of sunshine, Schopenhauer. He said that life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom.
Good God.
Yeah,
this guy's bleak.
Yeah, pretty bleak.
You know, I think life is much more interesting than that, because there's this strange tension to life. It's like full of dichotomies and paradoxes and things that just shouldn't really be, you know, and that's the most interesting thing about life. It's like, why we were sitting here talking about boredom as a utility of nature, like some like amazing product of nature that produces good. It's, you know, that this is kind of exactly what we're talking about, you know.
Because it is desire, I think. Boredom is really related to desire. If you don't want something different, you're not really bored. Because boredom is not just having nothing to do or no stimulation. It's having no stimulation and wanting something else.
Right.
It's actually connected to disgust, and it's kind of a disgust with your current situation of, I have nothing to do, you know, like you know, there's always other things you can do, but you perceive them to have no value is the thing, right? Like, so if you're a kid at home, you can always go rake the leaves or something, but you just perceive that to have no value. That's not going to improve my situation, so I don't want to do it, so I'm bored. Right, yeah. You can go clean your room or do the dishes, but, you know, that's not going to make you unbored, because how does that improve your situation in life? That doesn't fulfill your desires. So you need to purge yourself of desires to purge yourself of boredom.
This is also the first time in history where boredom, we've created products for boredom. Like, people don't have to deal with their boredom in a productive way anymore. You can just binge on Netflix now. This is the first time ever where boredom may be not producing anything good. What good comes from pacifying your boredom with a dopamine rush from Amazon or Netflix or YouTube or any of these companies?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. People just want the next stimulus, and I think our culture with, you know, the screens and being able to play games and stuff like that, so easily access any television show you want to watch. When I was younger, and I don't know if this is a product of getting older or if it's something different, but when I was younger, I really prized, I had these VHS tapes of my favorite TV shows.
Oh, you're dating yourself, Andrew Rader. Did you also have a fax machine?
I did not have a fax machine, but I had VHS tapes, and I also had, you know, like DVDs, burned DVDs with my favorite TV shows and stuff, and it was like prized, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah?
Yeah, they were like, you know, I maybe had like 5 movies on VHS, but they were my favorite movies, and I loved them so much. But now I have access to pretty much any movie I want at my fingertips, and I don't care. Like, I don't really, you know, I don't want to watch them anymore.
Internet ruined your love for movies.
It's too many. So this is another paradox we face in our world today. Too many choices. It actually does cause distress and makes people unhappy. If you, right now, you can go and meet like anyone you want on a dating app or whatever. You can watch any movie you want. You can learn anything you want. Like, you can go on Wikipedia. Actually, sometimes I'll just think about things and just look them up on Wikipedia just to read about them. But you have so much information at your fingertips. You can do anything you want. Basically, you can have any type of food. You can get it delivered. It kind of loses meaning, right? Because you have so many choices, and it causes distress. You don't know what to do, and you have indecision. and it actually creates unhappiness in a society. So like, I, obviously think arranged marriages and stuff are pretty horrible, not to be able to choose like who you want to marry and stuff, but there's something that makes actually people satisfied when they're kind of told to do something and they just do it, and if they don't have a choice, then it's it's out of their control, right?
Yeah, and I just want to defend you, because I know you're not advocating arranged marriages, which makes you sound like an ancient misogynistic prince.
I am definitely not.
Yeah, I know. I just want to back you up there, because I know that's not what you're saying.
No, I'm definitely not. But the thing is, too many choices also make. I'm not sure what the solution is, because I think people should have choices. I like having choices too.
I agree with you,
but I think too many choices make us unhappy.
Yeah. No, I'm actually. This is a subject I'm really passionate about. Is all the choices available to us today, and I think you're right. It is maybe not a problem, but it is something that is very different from. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a problem. I'm also not saying it is a problem. I'm saying I'm open to any of it, but I'm not. I'm not being helpful, I guess, with what I'm saying. But it seems like worth noting at the very least, because it's very different than anything we've ever seen. Ever.
Yeah, I think so. Basically, if you were a hunter-gatherer, you eat whatever you gathered and hunted that day, right?
Right. Even if it was like some nasty root.
Yeah.
But
like, you probably love it because you're hungry. Like, if you're hungry, food tastes that much better.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's kind of like what hunter-gatherers would do. If you prefer wildebeest, but you happen to kill a mammoth that day, you'd probably just be pretty happy with mammoth.
I mean, what about the future when people don't have half the challenges they used to have, and in the future they're going to have like a 1/32 of the problems they have today. Life is just going to get so much simpler.
Well,
how does boredom look in the future, where people aren't really required much? There's not really required much of people, and maybe they have less responsibility because they're not working. What are they going to do about boredom then?
Is it simpler or is it different? I mean, I guess you're talking about a universal basic income type system where people really don't have to work, but...
Well, I'm not necessarily saying it's the universal basic income, just to be clear. I'm just saying that in the future, no matter how the economy sustains itself, technology will be it's going to continue to make life much easier than it has already. And so what are people going to do about boredom?
I'm not sure that life is any simpler now. We have less things, actually. So it's much easier to be a minimalist now. Everything's on your phone. Like, does anyone have maps anymore? Does anyone have a calculator? I guess maybe a graphing calculator. Do they still have those? But anyway.
When I say life is simpler now, I'm not necessarily saying that it's like better than it used to be. It's the law of conservation. Everything's just converted. We have to pay for our modern conveniences somehow. It's not a free lunch. There's give and take with everything. Technology has trade-offs, and I think that we've got to acknowledge that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so then you were going to conclude this with a very controversial ending. Let's see where this goes.
Well, okay, so boredom is linked to depression, obviously, and if you become depressed, you become apathetic and don't want to do things sometimes, and that actually leads to more boredom, so it can be this vicious cycle. Drugs are one way that you can combat boredom, but obviously they come with their own problems. So, I mean, maybe there's like a drug epidemic, obviously, in America, and maybe there's like a boredom epidemic as well. So this is one of the things we're talking about, like with purpose, right? So if you aren't able to get a job or something like that in America, and you feel like society's let you down or something like that, and you may feel both bored. Actually, this is something with like retired people as well. They get bored, right? If you don't have kind of a purpose, something to do, you kind of get bored. And that can obviously lead to depression and drugs. Drugs actually can correct boredom, but obviously it's a temporary thing because they provide the stimulus. Right. So it's kind of like Netflix on crack. Crack is like Netflix on crack.
Boredom isn't the lack of purpose, because I mean, I think we've already decided that animals have boredom, and animals don't really have purpose the way that humans.
Do they not? Like, does an animal not have a purpose? I mean, their purpose is to go and get food and find a mate.
But when people say purpose, we have these caricatures that we try to paint of ourselves, and none of it's really real. That kind of purpose isn't really real. You can't go find that purpose like you can go find a great hamburger or something like that.
So you think that life is fundamentally empty, like Schopenhauer?
I guess I'd say I'm an existentialist. I think that you make your own meaning.
Some animals certainly do this. Like guide dogs and working dogs, like police dogs, sniffing dogs, they like working because obviously they get rewarded and stuff, but they, I think, feel a sense of fulfillment from accomplishing their mission, from like having a purpose. Basically, I'm helping out this blind guy across the street.
They're in a pack.
And they're playing their role and they're doing their job and they feel good about it, right? So certainly some animals have that same effect, but like, I don't know, like a bear.
Bears definitely don't get bored because they eat for like 3 months and then they sleep for 8 months and then they, they're just like, they're just looking for boredom.
Would a wild bear get bored, or is it just kind of like on a nature walk? Hey, there's like some honey I can eat. There's like a deer I'm going to chase. But
maybe domestication creates boredom.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That's, again, getting back to like the hunter-gatherer thing. Mm-hmm. Did hunter-gatherers get bored?
Maybe boredom has always existed as like a driver for like improvement and development, but I think when we say bored now, that's not what we're talking about. We talk about like, we're just I think it's like this lack of stimulation thing we keep saying. It's like really sad, actually.
Yeah, now
it's really sad.
Yeah, now we expect so much stimulation. If we don't get it, we feel emptiness. Like if you're watching Netflix and then you end the series and you have no more, you don't have your show anymore that you were watching, you're bored because you don't get that same kind of stimulation.
Or maybe you're watching the show and you're saying, this show doesn't have enough stimulus for me. I'm bored.
Yeah, for sure.
And you stop watching.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, actually, recently I found like a lot of shows. I have trouble getting into shows these days.
What have we covered? I guess we've covered boredom has always existed in some capacity because people, animals and organisms have always kind of aspired towards progress and change, and evolution is like enough of a example for this. But I think it's fair to say that there's some kind of new boredom that we experience as people that is a totally different kind of thing, that's maybe just a product of our expectations.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we're probably more conditioned to be bored.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
It's hard. We don't know for sure if that's true, but I think it seems reasonable to me. It seems true, so it must be.
Well, I mean, because when you say when somebody says they're bored of a show on Netflix, it's not the same thing as a dog being bored waiting for their owner to come home, right? It's not the same thing.
Why is it different?
Because one seems like it's a vibration thing. Like maybe the animal wants to like feel your energy, wants to play with you, wants to, do something with you. And the other one is just like, an expectation that is, you could argue that they're spoiled. You could argue that the person saying that this, I'm going to stop, this show isn't good enough for me, they're just spoiled. Or maybe the dog is spoiled too. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
That's very new agey,
yeah.
Feel your energy.
You know me. Hey, life is vibration. Doesn't matter what you think about that. You cannot have life without energy oscillating between positive and negative. It's vibration.
What does that mean exactly?
Positive and negative.
Like a battery?
Charges. Yeah. Neutrons.
Yeah. That is. I mean, there's protons and electrons in your body.
Yeah, everything's a positive and negative charge oscillating. Binary is built on this concept. I mean, on a fundamental level, and an atomic level, at a subatomic level, everything is an illusion, and that's
well, that's true. So matter is mostly not here.
Yeah,
like matter is mostly empty.
Right. Yeah. It's all just. It's all. You could say it's all just energy. Like
you're talking about like de Broglie waves. I think is maybe the concept you're going for, and basically like if you don't line up the vibrations correctly, you would like pass through a wall and stuff like this. So de Broglie had this hypothesis about how, I can't remember exactly, but it's something like the ability to pass through walls if you didn't have the right alignment of frequencies or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I forget the details. But
you could walk through walls if you could.
Yeah, like fundamentally a wall is mostly not there. All matter is mostly not there. So it's only it's force fields. It's electrical force fields.
So are you agreeing with me that everything's vibration or not?
Nah, well.
I want to fight you on this. This is another episode.
Yeah.
This is another episode. I'm interested in this because
it sounds very new agey, but I'm not sure exactly what you mean by vibration, but in some sense there might be, yeah.
Yeah, vibration is, it's a loaded word. People hear it and they get scared. We'll talk about it. This is another episode.
This sounds like you're talking about like crystals.
Yeah, nope. Definitely not talking about crystals. Talking about
energy crystals.
Oscillation of energy, back and forth.
Yep.
in order to create everything we're seeing.
Yeah, like fundamentally it's electrons orbiting protons. Those are positively and negatively charged, and electrons can be expressed as waves, which is has a vibrational component to it. So in some sense, yes, but it seems too simplistic just to say everything's like vibrating energy, basically.
Right. Yeah. I'm simplifying a little bit. So I guess that's maybe the part that you thought was new agey, but yeah, I think you're a little more than a vibration. We're more than vibration. We're actually here, right?
Mostly not here.
Mostly not here.
We're mostly water, and most of that water is mostly empty.
Oh my God, we got to cut this off. This is like 6 other episodes. We have the rest of the month planned out now. Oh my God. That does it for us today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or CastBox. That way your phone will always stay up to date. You never have to remember to download an episode. When you want it, it's there. You don't have to use your data. It's a thing of beauty. Unless you don't like the show. If you don't like it, you shouldn't let it take up space on your phone. Don't be stupid. Be sure to check out the new YouTube channel. We do have that up for people who want to comment. That's been a request, even though it's not the most popular place to listen to it. You can still go there if you want to involve in the greater conversation that's happening. youtube.com/spellboundshow. If you want to send me an email, you can do that. hello@spellboundshow.com. I'm Julian Smith. This has been Spellbound. Until next Monday, take care.